In this first brief introductory session, we're going to discuss the concept of business strategy, and in particular, introduce the idea of strategic analysis. I'd like to begin with a story of a company that many of you are probably familiar with, Apple Computer. Apple was a pioneer in the personal computer market, entering in the late 1970s. Early on, they were a dominant player, but soon there was entry by competitors such as IBM and eventually the clones of IBM. And eventually, what we call Wintel standard from Microsoft Windows and Intel came to dominate the market. By 2000, 2001, Apple was a bit player in the personal computer market, commanding only about a 3% market share. The company itself was floundering. Some years it was profitable, but many years it posted significant losses. Rumors abound about the imminent bankruptcy of Apple. And then Apple made a very interesting strategic shift, seeing themselves not just as a personal computer company, but broadening their horizons and viewing themselves perhaps as a consumer electronics company. And they introduced a product that, once again, many of you are probably familiar with, the iPod. And over the next 10 years, an amazing transformation took place. Apple redefining whole product segments, including cellular phones, personal digital assistants, and now with the iPad, perhaps reinventing even the personal computer. They have grown now to be the largest capitalized firm in the world, and obviously one of the most admired. So what happened here? What was the change in strategy here that led to a company that was about to fail to being the success they are today? Did they know at the time that their strategy was the right one? How would they assess whether it was the right strategy or not? Was it one that was a conscious choice, or was it emergent from a series of decisions that they made to make this transition that they did over the last 10 years? It's these types of questions that we would like to explore in this series of lectures here. Now, strategy is a term that is bannered about quite a bit in the popular business press. You turn on CNBC, you read Wall Street Journal, and we repeatedly see references to firms and their strategy. But how do we define it? What exactly is business strategy? Now, there are as many definitions of strategy as there are strategy professors or even strategy pundits. But for one, I would take the following. This is an old definition of strategy taken from Kenneth Andrews, who wrote a book very influential called The Concept of Corporate Strategy over 40 years ago. And he defined business strategy as follows. Strategy is the pattern of decisions in a company that determines and reveals its objectives, purposes, or goals, produces the principal policies and plans for achieving those goals, and defines the range of business the company is to pursue, the kind of economic and human organization it intends to be, and the nature of the economic and non-economic contribution it intends to make to its shareholders, employees, customers, and communities. Quite a mouthful there. But I like it because it highlights many of the key elements that make up business strategy. First, it highlights the idea of objectives, purposes, and goals, the mission of the enterprise. Second, it discusses the idea of policies and plans for achieving those goals. Third, it raises the idea of scope. What's the scope of our business? What's the range of businesses that the company is to pursue? And then finally, and equally importantly, it talks about the values of the enterprise. What's the contribution that the business intends to make to its shareholders, employees, and other stakeholders? So using this as a basis, we can form a simple schema for characterizing the strategy of a firm. First and foremost, we have the strategic mission of the firm. This is about the firm's values, its purpose. What's its objective? What's it trying to achieve? It also defines the scope of its operations. What markets is the business looking to operate in, both in terms of technologies and products, but also in terms of geography. Are we a global company, or are we a company maybe focused only in the US or some region and the like? Now, supporting the strategic mission is this idea of a strategic plan, or a business plan or business model. How will the firm position itself in a competitive market, and how will it leverage its internal resources and capabilities to deliver on this mission? Last but not least, we have strategic actions. This is where the rubber really hits the road. Individual actions taken by firms to advance their strategic plan and achieve their strategic mission. This is everything from a merger and acquisition, perhaps a way to diversify into new markets by acquiring a competitor in that space. This could be things like alliances with various partners. It could be a new product development strategy. In Apple's case, bringing together the iPod as a new product on the market. So taken together, these three elements help define a business strategy. So the question for us as strategists is, how do we then assess a strategy? How do we assess and analyze whether one is a good strategy or a bad strategy? And that gets us to the idea of strategic analysis. This is something we can actually analyze and assess.